The Nun II is the latest installment in the Conjuring connected universe, a franchise that has been extremely inconsistent when it comes to the quality of its releases. When it comes to the Conjuring universe, I'd call myself a fan. Well, kind of. I absolutely adore the first and second Conjuring, and I think that the introduction of Valak in The Conjuring 2 was fantastic. I was immediately wanting to know more about the character and their origins, so when the first Nun got announced, I found myself to be quite excited. But then I watched it, and I wish I hadn't have bothered. A forgettable story, bland characters, and piss-poor writing. It was extremely boring. Coming out of that film, the last thing I wanted for them to do was to make a sequel, but alas, 5 years later, here we are. When this film was announced, the first thing I thought was, oh god, please do not be as shite as the first one. But when I saw that Michael Chavez was directing, I became slightly more hopeful. As the director of the third Conjuring, which I thought was a decent film with some great moments, I was hoping that he could recreate some of the creativity that he had shown in that movie. However, upon doing further research for this review, I can also see that he directed La Llorona, which is arguably the worst installment in this franchise. Things I would rather do than watch La Llorona include the following: watching paint dry, shitting in my own hands and clapping, and pouring Carolina Reaper chili sauce into every orifice in my body. As I was not aware of this at the time, I went into the Nun II with slightly higher expectations, but even still, I was let down. The Nun II is just as forgettable as the first. Staying engaged and awake for this movie was a task in and of itself. We are reintroduced to some of the characters from the first Nun movie. We are reintroduced to Maurice, who has now been possessed by the spirit of Valak, and we are reintroduced to Sister Irene. I must say that the actress who plays Sister Irene does do a decent job with the shit script that she has been given. There are some new side characters too. We have Sister Irene's extremely forgettable nun friend, and we have the mother and daughter duo whose names I cannot remember. The newest additions to the cast were extremely boring, extremely forgettable, and had dialogue that could cure insomnia. At the beginning of this movie, they try to pose the nun as a real threat, and in some scenes it does work. Some of the shots in the nun are extremely well done with some nice videography, such as the scene you see in the trailer, which I think should have been kept out of the trailer because as soon as I saw that book stand, I said to myself, oh, here's the bit from the trailer, and I immediately knew what to expect. There's some interesting shadow work at points too that I enjoyed. However, in most of the scene, the tension drags out for far too long. Characters will hear a sound and follow it for a minute, but then another sound which will bring them into another room. Then they'll see something and go into another room, and then spend 2 to 3 minutes searching a room, hearing noises and seeing things. When you do this, the audience knows what to expect. We have seen enough shit horror movies to expect a jump scare, and as a result, I didn't even fall for one of the intended jump scares within this movie. As someone who is easy to jump scare, this was extremely disappointing. One of the things that almost got me was when a fucking crow flew past a window, but I was so disengaged at that point that nothing would have startled me. Some of the deaths in this film as well are downright ridiculous and hilarious at points. My brother and I found ourselves laughing at how bad some of these scenes were. And what is it with extremely powerful demons not being able to kill people when they're in a group? You'd think that a demon could aim a piece of furniture at a schoolgirl, but apparently not. The demon can cause people to spontaneously combust, but God forbid hitting somebody with a chair in a packed room. Suddenly they become stormtroopers and can't aim for shit. Another point. For a boarding school, which is where a lot of this movie happens, there seems to be one fucking class. How is that school even a thing? Where are these children's parents? Would you not inform them that something like this had happened? And it does get extremely ridiculous at points. If you want to zone out for 2 hours, go and watch The Nun II. If not, save yourself the money and spend the time that you'd save doing something else.